Hello everybody. Today on the Chats episode, I am joined by Mark.
Hello, still here. Gaz won't release us.
And I'm joined by Rich.
Hello.
Captive audience. So guys, today we're having a bit of a chat about projects that we've worked on and may have gotten away from us slightly. This is mostly going to be about my guests chatting away here because I've got many projects that have escaped me and would take longer than this episode to talk about. So we'll start with you, Mark. And what did you want to talk about?
When you threw this one my way, it was a bit of a tricky one to come out with something to talk about, because in terms of projects that have gotten away, not that many, because I don't really dare to get stuck into the bigger projects. I look at the stuff that you guys put out on social media, and I'm nowhere near that level. So I'm very much at the beginner/intermediate stuff, which you will see on screen shortly with photos. But one that I thought was, I don't know, just an interesting project, because it was a little bit bigger, was I decided to do a Kelly's Heroes Sherman. And this was before Warlord released their Kelly's Heroes Sherman. So you'll see hopefully a couple of pictures of, here's one I cobbled together out of a Rubicon kit. And then, like, about 3 months after that, I'd finished that project, they then announced they were doing a good one. So I bought that as well, and just sort of compare. Yeah, it's just a kind of compare and contrast, I guess. So, I mean, kicking off with movie tanks in general is you could probably do a whole episode on that. Excuse me, in itself, but the Sherman in Kelly's Heroes never sort of existed, certainly not in World War II, not in that format. It's cobbled together out of different things. I believe off the top of my head, because I'm kind of shooting from the hip and haven't looked this up recently, but I believe it was a Yugoslavian army Sherman. So for starters, for people who are massively into the historical detail, anyone who knows the American army in World War II will look at that Sherman and straight away go, that's the wrong colour.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of point one. You've then got, again, shooting from the hip, and from what I recall, it's got a 76mm gun on it. But the hull of the tank and the turrets, I think, are early war sort of stuff. So it's not stuff which would have been fitted with a 76. And that was done as, and that when the film company bought the tanks, they were 75s, so they had to convert them for the script. And there's other oddities all over it. So to get around that, I bought the Rubicon kit, which is basically gives you a million different options for doing all sorts of different Shermans, and then ignored all of history and just paused the movie and went, right, what's it got on it? So put a Sherman together. And again, I'm sure that, proper tank experts will correct me and say, actually, the 76mm was retrofitted onto earlier tanks, and you could have found it in World War II. And fine, I'm more than happy to be corrected. But it was getting that put together first. Then it was getting an oddball figure, sawing him in half at the waist and shoving him in the turret. And then it was, putting on the little oddities which were bolted onto the tank in the movie, like I think there's a watering can on the front, and all these sorts of funny little bits, and doing that, and obviously the loudspeaker on the side, which mine is a pretty rubbish version. I think it's just like the top of a paint dropper, a paint lid sawn off with some matchsticks chucked in. So it's quite lame. But then Warlord brought theirs out, which I think is fantastic, and. A really, really, really nice model. So now at some point, given that the oddball Sherman, he's a leader of 3 tanks, I'm going to pull a load of bits off that first one I did and turn it into one of his mates' tanks instead.
Yeah.
And then use it in that way. But bit of a long ramble there. But in terms of a project I did, which I thought, this has been a bit interesting, because it's not historical. It really isn't. This is Hollywood. And it's how do you take a realistic tank kit and then ruin all historical authenticity to turn it into a famous movie tank? And that was quite a fun project, I think.
See, as much as I really, really dislike the movie Fury, I've actually seen a few people do a model based on Fury, and to be honest with you, they look pretty cool. So it's like a modern version of Kelly's Heroes, like a Sherman with a bunch of random crap strewn all over it.
Yeah, I'd love to do rules for it. I'm going to start on my rants about those wooden planks I've got on the side that deflect 88s at close range and stuff like that.
Well, I've got 3 finished Stugs with pine pole armour.
Yeah, but they're concrete on the front as well.
They did. Concrete and pine poles. That was the finished up armour version of a Stug. So yeah, I seem to think it worked.
Oh, awesome. Well, they to be fair though, Mark, they do look pretty awesome. I think you've done a pretty decent job of the one that's not the Warlord one, the converted one. Looks pretty ace. So yeah, that's not bad.
It's very nice of you to say. A mate of mine took the photos and made them look a lot better than they actually are in real life. So.
Now, Rich, your sort of studio. Do you want to say something little about your? So you've got a page on Facebook. Do you want to talk a little bit about that first, and we'll start looking at some of your wacky projects?
Yeah, can you want? Yeah, I'm Filed Armories. I am proprietor and sole member of. Yeah, I do 3D CAD and 3D masters for several companies, Rubicon and Empress amongst others. So yeah, that started about a year ago when people sort of suggested that my stuff was good enough to reproduce. I'd made masters in the past for others, the old-fashioned way, out of bits of cardboard and string. But yeah, so I'm now doing 3D print stuff, which has just meant that my project load has just massively increased. So I'm doing stuff that I wouldn't even dream of. Yeah, so Filed Armories, have a look, see what you think. And,
some very cool stuff. So what for you was your most ambitious project?
Well, yeah, most ambitious project. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Probably the most ambitious and most ridiculous was the Reichstag.
Let's see if we can get a picture up now. 2 seconds. Let's get this up on the screen so everyone can see it. This thing's probably been floating around the Bolt Action page on Facebook for a while. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, I'd go with that. Yeah, it was. I get inspiration, and then for a project, and then think I'm never going to do that. It's ridiculous, and then it niggles away at me, and then before I know it, I've started something. And yeah, it's. I'll send you a link afterwards. I'll have to go and dig it up of the Low Event Forum.
We'll stick it in the description.
Yeah, and the build log is on there, and it's pretty crazy. It started off with the idea of the because I've got Soviet forces and I've got several bits of German forces, but I wanted to do a last levy, and the last levy extended selector has got quite a lot of funky stuff in it.
Yeah,
and then it started to get a little bit out of hand quite quickly, and the last levy force has never been painted. Yeah, I have a Reichstag that's 4 feet long. One of the problems I struggle with, I'm sure both of you can appreciate this, is I like things to be bright. The Reichstag is 4 feet long. That is half scale at 1:56. That's actually 1:100. Even though it's massive, it should be twice that size.
Yeah.
So that really upset my OCD a little bit. It's just like I want to build it full size, but then realise the practicality of it. If I've got a 4 foot high block covering 6 feet or more of the table, you can't actually play a game in front of it. So I reduced it to 4 feet, and it's still massive. But yeah, that got massively out of hand. And then I also run into the problem of you want the Reichstag to be a grand building, and the whole grounds and everything in front of it, you expect it to be grand. Hitler burned it down in 1934, I think, something like that. Yeah, and they basically, from that point onwards, ignored it. That was the old Germany and not Hitler's Germany. So they weren't interested in it. Effectively, it was left abandoned, and the site in front of it was a building site. They were going to build the Volksdome in front of it, so they would just ripped up all the grounds and just put building site in front of it. So actually, I think you've got some pictures of the whole table. The buildings in front of it are just like scrubby builders' buildings, and things like that. So it sort of loses a bit of its grandeur. It's more of a backdrop. But, yeah, it was. That definitely got out of hand. That's now at Firestorm. Ian Jones acquired it from me. So
okay.
If anybody's Firestorm and have a chat with Ian, and when we're out of this quarantine stuff, and I'm sure he'll be happy to let you have a look. That was definitely out of hand. That
Firestorm, are they the guys that do the Welsh Open?
That's them, yeah. Cardiff, yeah.
I know that Mark Vance has taken over running the Welsh Open.
Yeah. I'm hoping to make it again. I've been there for years and years and years. Pretty much everyone I've done, I think.
Yeah.
And absolutely top group of guys.
Awesome.
And really, really switched on to the fun side of things. They want everyone to have a good time, and they adapt their process. They don't stick to the same thing every year. They listen to the feedback, what was good, what was bad, make the changes. And it's constantly evolving. I think this year they're doing 2 one-days that are sort of linked, an armour day and an infantry day. And mixing it up that way.
No, I've seen that. Mark's invited me to go along, and it's one of them tournaments that I've always really wanted to go to, but I've always, when I've ever moved around the country, I've always been on the wrong side of the country to make it worth it. But I think I might give it a go and just sort of see if I can tag on with some of the guys from Birmingham and go up with them.
Well, I drive down from Preston, and it's definitely worth the 5-hour drive. It is. They're cracking. It's a fantastic facility as well. They've got the food's on site. They've got a half decent chef in there. They've got a bar inside the main hall. Absolutely fantastic venue. Great people, and great atmosphere. It's the atmosphere I go for.
Yeah.
Really. My lists have been variously awful. I think my crowning glory was coming absolute dead last out of 44 players.
Wow.
Yeah. Bear in mind, I've got two. I've got the T100 and the SMK, which are 2 medium tanks, experimental winter war tanks. They're 1-48, and they're both about 10 inches long.
I was going to say enormous.
They are terrible. Absolutely terrible. But the look on your opponent's face when you're outflanked with these 2 monsters, absolutely priceless. And then came dead last. And that was the best tournament I've ever been to, and I came dead last. It's just because the atmosphere and the opponents were really good.
Do you think we can convince one Mr. Mark to come along to the Welsh Open at some point? It's kind of like a middle point between all of us, I think.
Probably is, actually. About as far away from all of us as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, isn't it? When it's a bit of a trek, isn't it? But that's I'd really like to go to. I've been to various events where there's been like mini tournaments going on, but I haven't been to one of the dedicated ones, which you guys have been so heavily involved in. And it'd be really nice to actually see that in anger and see what goes on.
Yeah.
I go to less now. In fact, pretty much that's the only time I play Bolt Action now is at events. But there's quite a few really well thought through, well planned events around the country. They wax and wane, sometimes they've got loads of people, sometimes they haven't. But it's with the careful choice, you can definitely have fun at some really random places. I mean, some most unlikely places. Diving school in Doncaster was one of the ones I think. Very odd, but they put on a good show. So.
What was that, underwater Bolt Action?
No, that was it was just their venue. It was a scuba diving club. It was just a bit weird.
Okay then, Rich. So what else have you been working on then? Because I've got a few of your photos up here you've sent across to me, and there's a big amphibious looking thing.
The LCTA, that's probably Mark's fault. In fact, that is Mark's fault.
Right, this one's Mark's fault. Here we go. This is the LCTA. Go on, do you want to tell us a little about this?
4-5 Commando. That was built for the Welsh Open, actually. And unfortunately, I hadn't read the rules pack, and they stopped doing the armour game. So they used to do an armoured game first to break the ice, and you had pairs, and then have the normal infantry games after that. I hadn't read the rule pack, and I'd built an armoured force for it. And they hadn't done it that year. So that was my own fault. But I was taking 4-5 Commando, 4-7 Commando, which is an absolutely fantastic force to play. I take no vehicles, my anti-armour is a Piat, that's it. And I've had some fantastic successes with them because they're just, people don't know what to do with them. I use up and atom and just throw my infantry straight forward at people, and they just can't handle it. It's great fun to play. And yeah, that is the Royal Marine Armoured Support Group. That is H Troop. Let's get it right. Hound, Hunter, and Hussar. And what they had was the Sherman was the observation post for the three. It should be 3 Centaurs, but they arrived in different landing craft. So this is one landing craft full, basically, of H Troop. The original plan was the Centaurs didn't have any engines in them, and they were just going to be gun turrets on their landing craft. But they decided to fit engines to them, and so they survived for about, I think it was about 4 or 5 days after landing, and they scrapped them all after that. They were pretty hopeless. They got a 95mm howitzer on them, so they're in bow action. They're completely hopeless because they've got no bow machine gun. So as tanks go, they're pretty useless. But I just thought
I think they gave some of them to the Canadians after that.
They did, yeah.
Well, in that standard, sadly British thing of let's cast off our stuff to either our friends or the Royal Navy. Yeah, it was a bit of
That was it. The Royal Marine Armoured Support Group was basically disbanded almost immediately after D-Day, after like D-Day +2. And they gave them to the Canadians, who ran them for a bit longer, so they ran out of ammunition, I think. But yeah, some of the accounts of them on the beach. One of them spent its entire ammunition supply shooting up one bunker, and it made no effect. Had no effect on it. Things like that. So some of them were pretty awful. But yeah, I just thought it was fun. I've always wanted to do it because you've got the distinctive markings around it. So there's one at Pegasus Bridge. There's one there as not a gate guardian, but you know what I mean, as a memorial.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're just very distinctive. Everybody knows anything about those sort of things. You'll recognise them straight away. So yeah, just a bit of fun. And then they've also got the Barb as well, Beach Armoured Recovery Vehicle. That's just because I like building stuff. That was old-fashioned build out of card. Yeah, and again, if you're ever playing armoured games, a recovery vehicle is great because you just mess with your opponent, stealing victory points from them. I've used a few times; they're just funny. That was, and the LCTA then was I need something to bring them onto the beach. Why don't we do one of those? The original plan was to do landing craft assault as well for the infantry, but we run into the scale problem. Landing craft assault can carry about 40 troops.
Yeah.
But you can get about 10 28mm figures on their bases in a landing craft assault. So it doesn't work. It just can't work. So that got canned in the end. And what I did on the day was the tanks came out, and I used that LCTA then to transport my troops around the games.
That's a good, effectively a display board.
That was exactly what it was intended for. So that worked quite well. That was again got out of hand pretty fast. That started off with just taking the Brandos and ended up buying 4 tanks and building a landing craft. I've even got a Centaur. There's a Centaur dozer in there. That never even went D-Day. They turned up well after. So yeah, it was just I'd got another Cromwell hull and didn't know what to do with it. So what I should have done is built the other one of the Centaurs really and had the full
troop. 3, so,
yeah. Wow.
Oh well. What about your Russians then? So we've got a scout force.
Yeah. Another one that got out. That was kind of first Welsh Open. I can't remember. Might have been. No, actually, I think that was Rushton. Actually, it was Phoenix game. Russians. I wanted something different to do with the Russians. I've been using Russian for years, so I was looking about and I came across the idea of doing one post-war. So that force is 1947.
Yeah.
It's a scout platoon. It's roughly historically correct, give or take. It's not that easy to find much detail about what you need for, but yes, it's about right. And they've got BTR 40s, which is the proper first attempt at real armoured personnel carriers, dedicated ones. And it got out of hand because I thought, I'll maybe just build one. And then I was doing some work for Die Waffenkammer at the time and said to Jeff, who owns it, I said, look, if I master this thing, any chance of you casting a few, if you can then sell them on afterwards? And yeah, go on then. So before I know it, I've mastered a BTR 40 and the anti-aircraft variant, BTR-40A, and built a force around from just some Soviets I'd got knocking about. I've now got a full armoured scout platoon in BTR-40s. It's quite interesting to play armoured infantry in that way, because I mean, normally, like, you think of half tracks and things to be a waste of time, but actually it's quite a scary force, because there's nothing, pretty much SMGs and not a lot else, except I can deliver them now under armour.
Yeah.
So they've got all the Soviet things going for them, and they're really quite a frightening force. The only problem I had was anti-armour, so I took an air observer, which sort of, again, fits in with the scouting type thing. But what I hadn't really figured on was, obviously when your air attack comes in, you have to roll to hold fire. And every single one of my vehicles has got an MG on it.
Yeah.
And I've got an anti-aircraft with twin HMGs on it. I shot down my aircraft every time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was all good fun. But yeah, that was another one that started off with a silly idea, and then before I know it, I was effectively commissioning custom vehicles from Canada.
Because I know that, so talk about that scouting force with the idea with the small armoured car with the Soviets. I know that Brian Cook put into the Eastern Front, the Hungary book, Budapest book, there is actually a white scout car company for the Soviets with rules in there.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. That didn't exist at the time, but
yeah.
That's essentially what it is, yeah. I was using this white scout just because it made the rules easier. They've got MGs, MMGs, not HMGs. I think it's the difference. But I cleared it all with. That's one of the advantages of the likes of the tournaments that I go to. If I do something a bit wacky, I just stop the line and say, I want to do this. What do you think? I'm not taking the piss. It was just doing something a bit different. The white scout car with an MG rather than an HMG. It's neither here nor there, So yeah, they're quite happy to let me run that sort of thing. Again, didn't do too badly. I don't think anybody got mauled by it. So what I don't want to do is take something different and then obliterate somebody.
Yeah,
that's not fair. But as long as it's reasonable, then that's another one that got out. The latest one's Dieppe. I think I've sent you pictures of that one as well.
I think I've got. Hang on. They look
you got
Canadian.
Some pictures of Churchills.
No, I didn't get that one. Sorry.
No, I'll send that to you then. I thought I had to. I started off with the idea of they're the last four I've sent to you. So started off with the idea of Dieppe landing. It's been niggling at me for years. That one. It was the disaster at Dieppe.
Yeah.
Prelude to D-Day, but real disaster. Quite a very sad story, really, and absolute disaster from a military point of view. But it started off. I was going to get some Bob Emerson Churchills and use those, but problem is they had a mix of Mark 3s, Mark 2s, Mark 1s. Now Bob does Mark 1s and Mark 2s. Warlord does Mark 3s, but nobody does all of them. So I thought, well, I'd have a go at drawing them, and so before I know it, I carried them up, 3D printed them, and see the pictures there. I could have bought a Dingo, but then again, no, I drew that one as well. So yeah, those are all 3D printed, and that's still ongoing. That one, I've got plans to do a display board of the beach landing. There's a pretty horrible picture actually of the Canadians up against the seawall after the battle. There's lots of them got killed at a little beach just up the way from Dieppe, Puys, I think it is, Puys. And what my intention is to build the beach and use the photograph as the backdrop, not with the dead on it, but just the hilltop behind it. That's the plan. I haven't quite got there yet. It's still that plan is currently in the progress of getting out of hand. So we'll see how we go. I've got the infantry starting to come together now.
Yeah.
And they're just like we were talking about previously, the historical force. You couldn't build the Warlord plastic box won't let me have enough rifles without bayonets. So I've had to scrounge load of rifles up because half of the rifles have got bayonets fit. It's like they didn't come off the landing craft with bayonets fit.
No, of course not. No, that could have been dangerous.
Yeah, it's a little bit frustrating in that respect. But I think we got it. And the other one was helmets. I want helmets without covers.
Yeah.
And then each box comes with, I think each sprue comes with like one or two. and I need like 50. So again, I've 3D printed them as well, which is ridiculous. But
When it comes to Canadian infantry during 1942 rather than 44 and 45, was there much a difference in the uniform? Because obviously, when it comes to the Normandy landings, there are key bits of equipment the Canadians had very differently to the Brits, including the boots, and a lot of more of them wore the more of the Mark III helmet, the turtle shell helmet. Was that the case in 42 as well?
No, not from what I can tell. There are some differences. They had the SMLE, I forget the numbers now. They had a different marker rifle to the standard. They didn't have the Canadian boots, which are the ones with the high leg.
Yeah.
They were available, I believe, but not necessarily issued commonly. So, to be honest, I struggled with getting that much detail. Things that people could bring up are no helmet covers,
Yeah.
and like a greenish uniform rather than the sort of khaki colour. But again, digging into it a bit further, that was sort of more. Yes, there were some uniforms that were a bit greener, but they were made in massive batches. Some of them were a bit green, some were a bit brown. So mine were sort of just a muddy, sort of beigey, browny, khaki colour. Because at the end of the day, I wasn't going to get that excited about it. And again, the rifles, the Mark IVs, which is what they've got, were there, some sort of, it seems, but most of them were issued with, I think it's Mark 1, Mod 3 or something.
The thing is, they're so tiny on the battlefield, and most people won't tell unless they get it right into the grill and go, oh, well, that's got the wrong type of rifle. You're like, well, come on, it's like this dude's 28 millimetres
that's
tall.
Exactly the sort of thing that gets picked up. But but I'm happy to make that sacrifice. Just as my painting's not that good anyway, so at 3 foot you can't tell, so it's fine.
Right then, chaps. Thank you very much for that episode on projects that have got slightly out of hand. Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you very much, Rich, and hope to speak to you again on another episode.
Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.